A suspect is now in custody and is being questioned. The American people can be assured that the FBI and their partners in this process have all the tools and experience they need to learn everything we can. And that includes what, if any, connection this individual has to terrorist groups.
A little bit of a victory lap for President Obama after the suspect gets caught in that Times Square failed bombing.
And sometimes in politics, it's just as good to be lucky as it is to be good. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Chalian.
And I'm Rick Klein.
Each weekday we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And it's twitter.com/thenote on a busy day in politics, in news. It's all over the place.
Well, kick us off, sir. What's your top line?
Primary season. We love it on Top Line when actual voters actually vote, and it's happening today in 3 states, all of which, by the way, President Obama flipped into his column in 2008. It's Indiana, it's North Carolina, and it's Ohio today, and a lot of different storylines that emerged through all of this. But one thing that I'm struck by, David, is that for all of the anti-establishment energy, and we'll see that play out in a lot of today's races, the handpicked choices actually may do fairly well today. It won't be that case over the length of the primary season, but for today at least, being the establishment choice doesn't necessarily mean you won't be the nominee.
Not necessarily, although I'm also very curious to look at today at enthusiasm. I mean, yes, Lee Fisher, the Lieutenant Governor of Ohio, handpicked choice, going to win possibly big, but I want to see what the turnout numbers are. Is there any enthusiasm in the Democratic base in a key battleground state? Because we've really seen all the energy on the Republican side so far, so that's another thing to look for today. Caught, yes, as President Obama was talking about at the top of the show, authorities have captured that Pakistani-American responsible for that failed bomb attempt in Times Square on Saturday night. So now, of course, enter the politics of national security. John McCain went out there this morning, Rick. He said, we should not Mirandize this guy. He's an American citizen, a Pakistani-American. Not Mirandize this guy and make sure we get all the information we need. You heard the president sort of taking that line of attack straight on there, saying they have all the tools they need to get all the information they want. We don't yet know if Faisal Shahzad has been Mirandized.
That's right. And it's an interesting line that Republicans have to walk here. Obviously, everyone is thrilled that this was thwarted, that this was stopped, and you want to congratulate the first responders. But you're seeing Republicans begin to make the case, at least quietly, that, as I mentioned at the top, this is luck, really, and this is ineptness on the part of it would-be terrorist that led to his capture and led to a tragedy being averted. Hawaii hardball. There's an increasing realization in Washington and beyond that Democrats are in real trouble in the upcoming Hawaii special election, and that's why the DNC is playing a little bit of hardball. They have leaked the results of an internal poll that shows that Ed Case, the former congressman, is the only candidate who can win in that race. This is part of an increasing effort by Democrats to push out the other Democrat in this three-way race, Colleen Hanabusa, who right now doesn't look like she has any intention of going anywhere. What will be interesting for me, though, is whether President Obama and whether the big party organs that surround Democrats in Washington, whether they decide to be more formal about their endorsement and be more overt in trying to push around here when there's a good chance that they lose this seat.
See, I don't think any of this is about actually altering the outcome on May 22nd anymore. I think this is a CYA leak of a poll that just lets everyone see that the White House and the DCCC knew who was going to win this race, but the two senators from Hawaii are with the other candidate. They're not going to be able to push her out. And this is a seat that Republicans are just going to rent, right?
Right.
That
They'll have it
that
for 6
come
months.
November, this seat is going to flip back. It's a 70% Obama district. They just want to start, covering their behinds to make sure it looks like they didn't miss it. Keystone tightening. The brawl in Pennsylvania between Arlen Specter and Joe Sestak is finally to be proven to be just that. They had their debate over the weekend, and now we have a new Quinnipiac poll out showing Specter with a single-digit lead. This is a significant tightening of the race. I think he's about 8 points up in this poll, and there's still 2 weeks to go here. And you know that when you see those trend lines from one candidate to another start closing in the final weeks, when all the money's being spent and all the organizations out on the ground, this is going to be a fight through the end.
We've been saying for weeks on this program and beyond that Sestak's got to make a move. Well, he's making that move. He's got 2 weeks left. People are focusing on the race, and they're showing that once they're focused on it, this could actually be closer than we anticipated for a while.
Without a doubt. We yesterday sat down and talked with Governor Tim Pawlenty, Republican in Minnesota. He was over at the Chamber of Commerce, and we began our conversation by talking about the economy. Governor Pawlenty, thank you for being with us. I know you're at the Chamber of Commerce, and you're talking about, with a bipartisan group of governors, the economy, a big focus, obviously. And I guess if I take a look at 3/4 of GDP growth now. Jobs are going in the positive direction. Dow Jones Industrial Average is looking pretty good. I guess it seems like President Obama and his administration have a case to make that they have turned this economic ship around, don't they?
Well, there's certainly been some positive developments, but a few months of data doesn't a long-term trend make. There's a lot of concerns, particularly around jobs. A lot of the recent job numbers are attributable to things like hiring census workers. And when you look at the unemployment rate on average across the country in a lot of states, there's still a lot of cause for concern.
Do you think we'd be at the same place that we are right now if there had been no stimulus? Or did the stimulus contribute to the positive growth that we've seen?
Well, most of the economists that I've talked to or have heard from have said the stimulus bill was not very effective in terms of creating new jobs, particularly private sector jobs, and that the bulk of the stimulus bill seemed to go to sustaining government bureaucracies, and perhaps government jobs, but that it really hasn't substantially contributed to private sector job growth.
So if the Republicans were successful in defeating the president's stimulus bill and that was not enacted, you think we would be as in good economic shape as we are in today?
I think we would be in better shape if we would have had a better stimulus bill, and by that I mean many Republicans argued for a smaller, more targeted, more impactful stimulus bill that would have affected the private sector more directly. For example, instead of shoving money into government programs and bureaucracies to sustain them, we should have immediately cut the payroll tax for employers and employees and put money immediately and directly into the pockets of employers and employees. That would have had a more bang for the buck in stimulus. And I think there are also many Republicans who would have supported a non-porky, non-earmarked commitment to infrastructure, roads and bridges. And of a nearly $800 billion bill, that stimulus bill only had about $50 billion for roads and bridges, and that was disappointing. So we think we could have accomplished as good or better results with less money, with a more targeted, more strategic, more private sector-oriented stimulus bill.
Governor, I want to ask you about the emerging situation down in Louisiana. We saw President Obama head there over the weekend and the federal government kind of pick up the response. What is your take on how the federal government has handled this? Do you think we were slow out of the box, or do you feel like it's been appropriate the way that the federal government has handled now the potential for an environmental calamity?
Well, this situation is still unfolding. We don't know how long or how deep the damage is going to be. It's obviously going to be a catastrophe of significant proportion, and it's not yet under control. And so there's a long ways to go before anybody can make any conclusions about what the cause was, how it was handled, how it was processed. We know this. This is going to be a very damaging set of events. It appears like the federal government so far is responding to the best of their abilities. But again, I think it's premature to make any conclusions about what caused this, how it was handled, and whether things could have been done differently. But right now, we all need to pitch in and focus on trying to help the effort.
Governor, obviously the situation down there causes us all sort of look at energy policy. And then, just a month ago, the president had talked about sort of incorporating some offshore drilling into his overall strategy. Should this give pause now? Should we be holding off on coastal drilling like that until we understand completely what happened here and how to avoid it in the future?
Well, I was told that this is the first offshore drilling incident of any significance since the 1960s. So almost 40 years have passed with an incident like that. I think there's certainly going to be lessons learned as a result of this tragedy, but I hope that they go to the issue of improving safeguards and improving technology and improving oversight, not trying to shut down drilling, because again, over 40 years we haven't had this number of problems, and we need the energy. So I hope that we'll focus on the lessons learned, and there will be some, but I hope they're going to focus on additional safeguards, additional oversight, better use of technology, better safety standards and backup mechanisms, rather than just making a blanket statement that somebody might try to shut down all offshore drilling. I don't think that would be wise.
So you don't want a moratorium as a result of this?
Well, we need to have a review of what happened and why it happened, and then take those lessons forward. But again, I've heard some voices in this debate say, let's just shut it down, and I don't think that's realistic or wise.
Governor, as you know, the new immigration law in Arizona has gotten a lot of headlines recently. It was tweaked by the legislature last week. I'm curious, in its current form, if the legislature in Minnesota presented that to you, is that something you'd be comfortable with signing?
Well, we need to be a nation that values legal immigration. It needs to be legal and reasonable and orderly. Our current system is none of that. It is chaotic, it is disorderly, and much of it is illegal. And so our country needs to do a much better job of enforcing.
And I understand that this is a response to that. Is it the kind of response that you'd be in support of?
I support stronger enforcement mechanisms for illegal immigration. I've done that in Minnesota in a variety of ways. It needs to be fair and legal, and I know there's some concerns about that relative to Arizona, but they're frustrated. I mean, they're living in a situation down there where they feel, many of their state citizens feel that the situation's out of control. The federal government has abandoned them or not helped them enough. And so tougher enforcement, stronger enforcement, securing the borders is a direction I think our nation needs to go. And we need to make sure, though, that it's fair and that it's reasonable.
Governor Tim Pawlenty, Republican of Minnesota, do you know when your next trip to Iowa is?
I don't think I have one planned, but thanks for asking.
No problem. Thank you very much for being here, sir. We appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.